Establishing central dominance, this advance opens lines for the queen and bishop while preparing a solid pawn chain. Developing the knight to its natural square, prepares for kingside castling and challenges white's central pawn push. Solidifying central control and asserting kingside influence, preparing for pawn advances. Challenging the center directly, c5 seizes central space and initiates a sharp positional struggle. Instantly seizing the center, white boldly pushes the d-pawn, creating a pawn chain and restricting black's queenside play. Opening the diagonal for the queen and bishop allows for immediate piece activity, challenging white's central pawn chain. Fortifying the central pawn chain, this knight aims to exploit the pawn tension and potentially expand on the queenside. Opening the center with this capture immediately alters the pawn structure, potentially liberating black's pieces. Recapturing the pawn opens the c-file for queenside pressure, a strategic priority now. A pawn thrust that opens a diagonal for the bishop, though it concedes a slight space advantage. Developing the knight to f3 solidifies white's central pawn and prepares for kingside castling, aiming for rapid piece development. Solidifying the king's safety with fianchetto, preparing for potential piece development while subtly challenging white's central control. Pressing the knight directly with the bishop initiates a positional bind, restricting black's development and eyeing potential weaknesses. Developing the bishop to g7 completes the fianchetto, creating a strong diagonal presence and preparing to castle, reinforcing the king's safety. Fortifying the center, white prepares to develop their remaining pieces and establish a solid pawn structure. Probing for weaknesses, black challenges the bishop's influence and opens potential lines for further development. Retreating the bishop here maintains pressure on the queenside, but concedes kingside expansion to black's looming fianchetto. Aggressively pushing the pawn here weakens the king's shelter and invites tactical shots down the open diagonal. Retreating the bishop here maintains its valuable pressure on the kingside, forcing black to address the doubled pawns. Aggressively challenging the bishop with the knight creates a potentially vulnerable outpost, but also opens diagonal lines for future piece activity. Securing the knight's retreat now prepares a central pawn push, but leaves kingside influence somewhat diluted. Sacrificing the knight clears the kingside dark squares, potentially opening lines for a dangerous pawn storm. Opening the h-file immediately adds pressure and forces black's king to confront potential piece infiltration. Securing the king provides a much-needed refuge, allowing development to continue unimpeded as the center solidifies. Exploring the central squares, NC aims to anchor a knight deep in enemy territory, restricting black's queenside mobility. Focusing the queen centrally improves its influence, potentially preparing for queenside expansion or reinforcing the kingside. Asserting control over the central light squares is key to white's developing plan. Initiating knight development to a more active square, this piece now aims to control central squares and potentially support a kingside advance. Securing the king's safety is paramount. This castling operation anchors white's monarch amidst the developing skirmish. Asserting central influence, e5 boldly challenges white's pawn structure and prepares for a potential queenside expansion. Sacrificing the knight here opens crucial diagonals for the queen and bishop, aiming to exploit the weakened dark squares around black's king. Reclaiming the central pawn with the queen solidifies black's presence and prepares for potential counterplay. Opening the e-file offers improved coordination and a clearer path for the rook towards central targets. Solidifying the bishop's diagonal pressure, this maneuver offers flexible defense and potential for future queenside expansion. Securing the b1 square fortifies the rook for a potential kingside assault or a robust defense against black's queenside play. Aggressively pushing the pawn forward creates immediate tactical complications, but weakens the kingside pawn structure significantly. Shifting the knight to e2 aims to bolster the kingside pawn chain and prepare for a potential advance on the kingside, while keeping a watchful eye on black's advanced g-pawn. Black seizes space on the queenside, aiming to disrupt white's structure and create attacking chances. Expanding along the queenside, this thrust seeks to loosen black's pawn structure and gain queenside space. Rallying forces along the open c file aims to disrupt white's pawn chain and pressure the queenside. Targeting the weak f6 square, this knight aims to exploit black's pawn structure and potential king safety issues. Initiating pawn expansion on the queenside to create counterplay. Opening the b-file swiftly seizes control, aiming to exploit the vulnerable queenside pawn structure and unravel black's cramped position. Opening the c-file with this pawn capture unlocks dynamic counterplay and tests white's central control. Anchoring the bishop to c2 offers passive defense. A stark contrast to the dynamic pawn advances black continues to orchestrate. Asserting control over the queenside open file, this pawn push begins to unravel white's pawn structure. Securing the d4 pawn's safety and preparing to contest the open c-file simultaneously. Gaining a tempo on the queen, black repositions to a more active square, eyeing the weak light squares. Fortifying the c-file and preparing to contest it, this move aims to stabilize white's position. Seizing the open c-file and threatening the weak b2 pawn simultaneously, this move creates immediate tactical complications. Securing the king from potential mating threats on the h4-d8 diagonal, preparing to defend the weakened dark squares. Expanding on the queenside, this aggressive pawn push aims to disrupt white's queenside structure and potentially open lines for black's pieces. A defensive repositioning, the rook retreats to safety, anticipating potential pawn advances, and eyeing the open central files for future contest. A bold raid begins, exploiting the open file and white's slightly exposed king, aiming to disrupt white's queenside stability. Unleashing a knight sacrifice to seize control of the weakened dark squares and disrupt black's queenside ambitions. Opening the f-file exposes your monarch to a direct assault, a daring but risky gamble. A decisive tactical blow, shattering the queenside defense and opening a decisive path to the black king. Challenging the open file with the rook opens new avenues for counterplay. Unlocking the powerful bishop with this repositioning creates immediate pressure on the weakened dark squares. Attempting to untangle the queenside pressure, though this might weaken the pawn structure further. The immediate threat on the 7th rank, aiming to pierce the black defenses, demands the utmost attention. Reinforcing the bishop on f8 solidifies the kingside's defensive structure and prepares for potential pawn advances or counterplay.